Hello, dear friends. In the second issue of my series, I would like to make three streams on Iran and the victory of Donald Trump that was announced yesterday in the Oval Cabinet of the White House. The point is that Kremlin doesn't think about political stability and ignore the rise of cryptocurrency that is in hands of Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Now this stream is connected with this topic. So let's start hearing, and I think you will like it.
And changes in the former Soviet Union after the Persian Checkmate. See my description of the Trump's Persian Checkmate, Europe out, China in. Against the backdrop of that Persian Checkmate, an alliance between the yuan and the ruble is already definitely unrealistic. But the rise of the crypto dollar is obvious, especially with high oil prices amid the weakening financial base of SCOBRICS. Trump threatens all of them not with weapons, but with cryptocurrency. The US dollar is clearly showing strength. Oil has jumped 25% and more since February 28th. The price of a barrel of oil has crossed the $100 mark. So far, this is classic petrodollar play. The yuan and ruble as of March 22nd look even weaker. At the same time, BRICS statistics are optimistic, and Russia is still exchanging yuan for rubles. The Bank of Russia just last week sold them for billions. Notably, Chinese banks are also building their payment systems on digitization of blockchains, albeit slowly and even with cracks for hackers. Russia's shadow tankers are no longer going through the Strait of Hormuz to India and China, so the SCOBRICS bloc is not dead yet. It is adapting with its de-dollarization, like in an oil marathon, while Trump arranged a 30-day sprint for the euro on March 16th, counting on accelerating the turnover of Trump coins. If Iranian oil becomes expensive, alternative energy will bring Trump and Xi closer by mid-June, and on digitized dollar and yuan already in bitcoins. The question is where? In Bhutan under Xi or in Florida under Trump? We won't talk about Bhutan. But throughout March, Trump supports from the Oval Office his cryptocurrency companies in their dispute with banks ahead of the upcoming replacement of the Fed chair with a Trump man. If the EU and the British meet Trump's demands to pay for the military umbrella first and a third of a trillion, then $2.5 trillion, they will pull trillions of dollars from all over the world precisely into digital dollars. They will clearly become more convenient than petrodollars, with Persian and Arab blood on them. These emotional consequences of the Iranian war, which Trump and Xi will probably finish in May-June anyway, will affect Iran's neighboring countries. Then the collapse of the collective Nazarbayev too is inevitable with the new constitution of Kazakhstan approved by referendum on March
in
15th,
Kazakhstan.
and President Tokayev as a result of the Persian Checkmate becomes a central player in Trump's Council of Peace, until perhaps Xi himself appears there.
Why
For
not?
Russia with its war against Ukraine, the Board of Peace is closed. And for the petrocracy around Putin, petrodollars are still more important than digital currency. This is one of the reasons why the Kremlin bluntly suppresses the internet even for its own financial survival. The Kremlin doesn't think about political stability with swearing in social networks due to internet shutdowns. Power in Russia with its central bank serves the petrocracy and fears Bitcoin. But in the US, Trump even has his own brands in the crypto world. For example, the meme coin Trump, which grows on hype, and that's even more than real paper money. The triumph of world Bitcoins with a capital in Florida is not far off. And for now, it's more of a banner for victory over the director of the Federal Reserve System. He was appointed by Trump 45, and Trump 47 threatens him with a lawsuit for fraud of $3 to $4 billion during the internal, even if not external, restructuring of the Fed building. If the current Fed chair Jerome Powell leaves his post on May 15th, His place will be taken by one of 3 Trump supporters, and everyone will learn about it at the Trump-Xi meeting in mid-June. Bitcoin is gaining strength from the Persian Checkmate. Demand for cyber currency is growing much higher than under Biden. By the summit or after the Trump-Xi summit, Bitcoin will receive support not only from paper dollars via low Fed rates, but also from compensation from Europe for the US military umbrella. And Zelensky won't get 90 billion euros for war for peace with Russia. So, Bitcoin is the joker in world trade, since the euro is wilting due to payments for the US military umbrella, while the yuan, ruble, and pound sterling, with their traditional reliance on petrodollars from Russia, Iran, and Venezuela, yield to the hegemony of alternative fuel for world energy and the AI industry. US and Chinese crypto assets during and after the Persian castling are by no means volatile, but predictable, and therefore, the yuan also dreams of becoming digital. Yes, Trump is for US leadership in cryptocurrencies, but a full-fledged Trump crypto dollar is rather dollar plus crypto add-on. Such a dollar 2.0 can dominate if in the fall the Trump supporters win with united US and Chinese stablecoins in the Trump-Xi deal in May-June, if any. The point is also whether China will agree to support such a to American and without Chinese shine crypto dollar. The Chinese-American dollar 2.0 also depends on China's civilizational superiority over young America with her 250 years by July 4th. If, of course, by June 5th, Trump's 80th birthday, dollar 2.0 wins with the Persian Checkmate. The US and China, with a joint bet on alternative energy sources for Iran, guarantee the transfer of power from the mullahs to secular Persians. After all, in this case, Persians and Americans together will begin to widely spread the benefits of peaceful nuclear energy and solar energy through partnership precisely with China. And then peaceful nuclear energy and solar energy as a real joint US-China AI project. One will reduce China's 90% dependence on Iranian oil, 2 eliminate Israel's fears of nuclear holocaust from Shiite fanatics in Iran and beyond, 3 open doors to Europe for US LNG, closing them for gas and oil from still militaristic Russia. See the film, Mr. Nobody vs. Putin. The history of US cooperation with Russia, China, and Europe on nuclear technologies is clearly outdated against the backdrop of the digital revolution since the 2000s and especially with the rise of the IT/AI industry from 2023-2026. And China is actively promoting its international cooperation in nuclear energy for better services and a new history of relations. In March 2026, China has 60 reactors in operation, and 38 under completion. Beijing exports nuclear reactors to 7 countries in the world. Pakistan alone has 6 nuclear reactors. So, the Persian Checkmate theoretically puts modular mini-reactors on thorium and salt, completely safe for Israel, from the US, and lithium solar panels from China, into the hands of secular Persians. This project objectively slows down the development of interconnected energy sectors and military-industrial complexes of many countries. If there are fewer militarists, there will be fewer wars for raw materials in the greater Middle East, and surely fewer refugees from there to Europe and the US, where resistance to Islamic terrorism is growing.
Right.
Solar energy from China, lithium panels, and mini-reactors from the US are not only energy hubs for IT/AI business. For example, accessible panels on private home roofs and solar farms stimulate agriculture with double use of virgin lands, creating jobs and reducing labor migration. The Trump-Xi negotiations in May-June could become the beginning of the world's liberation from the oil curse. Trump stands for a cheap energy at home and worldwide for the growth of America's well-being, and Xi, for the stability of China's development without the current oil-gas blackmail with its shadow tankers. The postponement of the US-China summit probably happened due to Europe's behavior in US DEMOCREVANCHISTS. They refused to recognize Trump's victory in Venezuela, Iran, and the Persian Gulf over the outright blackmail of international petrocracy. And therefore, the Trump-Xi summit is a victory of business over old-school politics. After that meeting, possible easing of sanctions for Europe on energy products from the former Soviet Union amid active growth of renewable energy in and outside Europe. In the perspective until the 2030s, the open cyber dollar of the US will displace the hidden, shadow, petrodollar, with which Iran's mullahs financed Shiite terrorism and even Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. This is realistic if everything happens quietly and without fanaticism. After that meeting in Beijing and agreements on Iran, precisely because of stable supplies of Iranian oil, prices will fall. Then Trump will declare his victory. I stabilize the entire Middle East. At the same time, China with Iranian oil will find itself as a partner with the US in the Peaceful Atom Program. This will be a sensation for the whole world. The US and China are capable of solving the problem quickly and peacefully. Trump will get political points at home, and China will become a friend for the US, unlike the forecasts of DeMoREVANCHISTS in US intelligence. The results of the May-June meeting will go to the asset of Trump's Board of Peace, not the UN. Such an agreement between the US and China to stabilize the oil market and jointly promote renewable and nuclear energy becomes a model of peacekeeping for the UN if it agrees to scale the successes of the Board of Peace. Otherwise, Trump will dismantle the UN by refusing to finance it and sharply raising land rent. An alternative to dissolving the UN looks like creating a working group on energy security under the UN with co-chairmanship of the US and China only with their veto right. At the same time, SCOBRICS are pushed to the background. China becomes the leader of the global South, and Trump the master of deals within the Monroe Doctrine too, i.e., the owner of the Western Hemisphere. If the Trump-Xi meeting in May-June fails, the Board of Peace remains Trump's project, and the UN works with Russia's veto right there. The task of the Persian Checkmate is to separate Iranian oil from military instability on the global energy market. But Trump and Xi still need to prove that even outside the UN walls, as former rivals, they can quietly and peacefully agree. Reduce tension around Iran. Stabilize the oil market. Start joint projects in nuclear and solar energy. As a result of the Persian Checkmate, the world's dependence on Iranian oil will decrease. 2. The SCOBRICS alliance without petrodollars will weaken, and the digital dollar will strengthen. 3. SCOBRICS, G7, and G20 have a choice, either self-dissolve or adapt to G2 of the US and China. 4. A possible scenario. The US and China do not declare friendship, but simply present their agreements on Iran's energy as a joint initiative for the UN. If after that oil prices fall, the world community will most likely accept exactly this decision. A failure of the G2 idea is possible with a sharp activation of Russia and the former Soviet Union in their clearly uncoordinated course to discredit the role of the US with China and Iran. Much depends on a possible change of leadership in post-Soviet Asia before or after the Trump-Xi meeting. Thus, in Kazakhstan, a revenge of the Nazarbayev family petrocracy against Takayev's digitocracy under the new constitution is possible. And we can look at this as well as a disagreement in the US themselves on the Persian Checkmate, which I'll say in the next YouTube stream. Although here too we will consider the human factor in the digitization of political changes in power, society, and the armed forces with intelligence community. In particular, this is 1. Russia's role in Pentagon AI scenarios on the topic, US-China control over Iran, with emphasis on the role of precisely Persian Iran, energy and Iranian oil prices. Russia wins from high oil prices in the SCOBRICS bloc. If the US and China stabilize the market and prices fall, this could cut Moscow's oil revenues many times over. B. Geopolitical influence. Russia traditionally positions itself as a mediator in the Middle and Near East, more on the side of Arabs, but not Persian Shiites. If Washington and Beijing agree directly, Moscow's role as mediator may weaken and disappear. See military political cooperation. Russia and Iran cooperated on security and sanctions circumvention schemes, and now there is none and won't be. Any failure in de-escalation between still religious, not secular, Iran and the US can change the balance of this cooperation with provocations from outside. Otherwise, Russia does not disappear from the G2 equation, but may no longer be the main player in the Iran deal between the US and China in mid-June if no power changes occur. 2. What G2 can mean for the former Soviet Union with their CSTO as the military political support for the SCO-BRICS bloc. The former Soviet Union is a very heterogeneous space. It is clearly demoralized by Russia's aggression in Ukraine and Azerbaijan's counterattacks against Iran. This is reflected differently in leadership and CSTO personnel. For the 5 Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, important are Chinese investments, Belt and Road Initiative, energy resource exports, transport corridors. If the US and China carry out the Persian castling and reduce tension around Iran, then that Asian 5 plus Armenia and Azerbaijan will have their sovereign role to stabilize their external energy markets, improve logistics through the Caspian and Central Asia, reduce risks of external sanctions. Southern Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Here their priorities on the Persian Checkmate differ. Various energy routes to Europe. ETHNO religious relations with Turkey and the EU for Armenia. Balance of trust between Russia, US, and China differs greatly. 3. Is a change of leadership possible in the former Soviet East after the Trump-Xi meeting in May-June with a change in the military political climate around Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan? There is usually no direct automatic connection between the meeting of US and Chinese leaders and the change of power in former Soviet countries. Well, but if we look, by the example of studying disagreements in US military political leadership, see stream on this topic later. Change of leadership in the former Soviet space happened due to ideological, not material factors. Fake reasons for elite changes are spread by engaged media, and the military under control of ruling organized crime groups force belief and loyalty to, inspired by them, internal economic crises, rigged electoral cycles, hidden and open intra-political elite conflicts, justice of quickly suppressed protest movements. External military political changes in the former Soviet space only indirectly affect power, for example, through changes in oil and gas prices in the energy military industrial complex, the military chain, through investments or sanctions against central banks, through changes in the balance between Russia, China, and the collective West before Trump 47 informing corrupted core of judges, diplomats, and investor associations. Therefore, expecting a direct wave of power changes, like in Iran, after the Xi-Trump meeting in May-June is quite realistic. After all, in 2025 in the same France, Macron changed 3 governments for the contacts he needed with Trump 47. But today all those changes look unsuccessful. A similar fate for Starmer in Britain, who is about to be swept away by anti-monarchist Farage's Party of Reforms. 4. More likely scenario for the former Soviet Union. With an agreement between Trump and Xi on the Persian Checkmate, the consequences for the former Soviet Union could be 1. Economic stabilization of oil prices, growth of trade through Eurasia. 2. Geopolitical strengthening of China's role in Central Asia, more complex balance of forces between Russia and China. 3. Energy New energy supply routes from energy sector. More projects in solar and nuclear energy. In the end, the US and China, after the Persian Checkmate, will agree on restructuring economic and diplomatic balances, but not on some quick, like in Venezuela, i.e., immediate change of leadership in Russia or former Soviet Oriental countries. The issue is the lack of reliable information from Trump and Xi about internal factors of political struggle in the former Soviet Union. This is a consequence of intelligence work under Clinton, Obama, and Biden. Under those Dems in power, Americans had no real idea of processes in Russia with its opposition. This was a reflection in that U.S. authorities' mentality of Beijing's principled reluctance since the Tiananmen Square events to support opposition inside the former Soviet Union. As one, but basic geopolitical scenario, one can flip the results of the future US-China deal on Iran. This is the strengthening of digitization of Kazakhstan and the entire Caspian energy corridor with the displacement of Russia's energy sector and military-industrial complex. This alone will cause the removal of petrocracy by digitocrats from military, political, and diplomatic structures in all former Soviet Oriental countries. Look, while Putin's petrocrats are busy shutting down the internet to protect their oil rigs from Bitcoin, Trump and Xi might just handshake their way to $1 2.0 backed by sats and solar panels. Funny how the real reset isn't coming from Moscow's blackouts. It's coming from Florida and Beijing deciding the future runs on code, not crude. Who knew that chessboard's next move was mining crypto instead of drilling wells? And there is connection between the title and final words of my previous YouTube stream. Trump's Persian Checkmate, Europe out, China in. And hey, if this were a real chess game, Trump just castled right into Xi's king, checkmate, baby. Now who's the grandmaster? In fact, Trump just queen sacrificed Europe for a mate in two. Sorry, Ursula, your move's over.
Okay, guys, that's all I wanted to say you today, right now, and I'm waiting for your questions, your offers, and many other positive things that uh, will help me to dig deeper and deeper in this topic. So, bye-bye.